Good evening, everyone. Just give it a few seconds before we start. See more people connect. All right, so I think let's start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second OWASP Night for 2020, and thank you very much for making the time to attend this event, especially to the keynote speakers for this evening, Ricky and Luke. Before we move to the main event, I would like to steal some minutes of your time to present some major changes that have occurred to the chapter in the last 6 months. First, there has been a slight change in leadership from Hemi Eri, whom due to life commitments have passed over the leadership baton to myself. I thank him very much as he has been fundamental in the transition. I will go over in more detail in the following slides on the other changes that have occurred to the chapter. It won't be long, I promise. First, let's go over what the 4 yearly meetings will be about. We have decided to focus on 4 key issues that affect our community. First, equality. It goes without saying we are a male-dominated environment, and it is difficult to be accepted if you don't fit this particular profile. Our objective is to have a whole meetup event focused on equality to help us evolve and help members who feel otherwise alienated to join our welcoming community. Second, education. As always, OWASP is all about educating and helping people increase the cybersecurity posture. We will not change that, and once a year we will go over a key topic. Focus on something interesting to the community that have not been covered by the other Sydney-based meetup groups. Third is community. While Sydney is the major business hub in Australia with the most cybersecurity jobs, our community is lacking. We have no major events and we don't talk much to each other. The objective of this night, once suitable sponsors are recruited, is to have an afternoon to socialize where we all come together for some drinks and canapes with our partners, friends, significant friends, or just by ourselves for us to become an actual community. The format of this is still under investigation as is the funding, but we'll be reaching out to the community for their input on how we can make this an activity we all want to come to. Finally, the workshop or the CTF. We want OWASP Sydney chapter to host the one CTF every security professional wants to attend. It's a tall order, but we'll do our absolute best. We are planning to have challenges for every aspect of cybersecurity, including compliance. Again, we will be reaching out to the community for ideas and requests for support and donations where appropriate. With this in mind, let's move to the services we are offering. As you can see in front of you, we have the services that we are offering. You are all welcome to register, share your posts and articles, etc. Let's show the world that Sydney has the best when it comes to cyber. Now, finally, but not least, the volunteers. We have Jack Gifford.
Hey, how's it going?
Cherry Liu. And Flam de Clark.
Hey.
If you need to get in touch with us, please free to send us an email to our group email or via any of the groups mentioned in the previous page. We're here to help you and are very glad to be part of this community. Any questions, please put them on the chat window. Thank you for listening. Now to the reason we are all here. The forum is yours, Ricky and Luke. Thank you very much for your time.
Cool, thank you. All right, let me start presenting.
Hold on.
Right, yeah, so is that coming through fine? Fantastic. Alrighty, thank you very, very much for that warm welcome. I'd like to definitely kind of say you're definitely going to be in a battle for cybersecurity leadership in Australia, because we're both from Melbourne. So, but I think we can safely say let's aim to be the best in the world. Right. So, Ricky, do you want to maybe kick it off here and what we're going to be discussing?
Yeah, so presentation is want to get into InfoSec. Here's what you need to know. So to be honest, we've done this one a couple of times before. We've presented this at conferences like B-Sides Perth, B-Sides Melbourne. No, B-Sides Canberra. But we've, I guess, cut it down today, to be honest, because of just for timing. We can talk for ages on these topics, probably longer than we can or need to. But we've cut it down for today. But yeah, hopefully there's some proactive tips that we can help along the way. And if you ever need any information or whatever, Lucas and I are always there, available. Just message us on LinkedIn or whatever and connect, and that'll be a topic of today as well, as about connections.
Cool.
Yeah, far away.
Alrighty, so a little bit about me. So I work at Seek. I'm in a fantastic security team at Seek, and I have been for almost 2 months now. So before that, I was a penetration tester, and I managed and led teams across the world. And I am one of the co-founders of TUSCON, which is the Sunshine Coast's most disorganized conference. But essentially, it's a camping conference where it's just a very, very low-key event. Roughly about 50 people or so go camping for the weekend, mainly around things like workshops, so hands-on learning, and just chill out next to the beach during, winter sort of thing. So it's quite nice. And I'm also involved in B-Sides Melbourne, one of the coordinators there. And unfortunately, we weren't able to run it this year. I think it was 2 or 3 days just before COVID hit. We had to pull the plug, which is most unfortunate. And last but not least, I've been pretty much a hacker for the last 10, 15 years, professionally, and then unprofessionally a little bit longer as well. So.
Cool. And yeah, so my name is Ricky Burke. I run a company called CyberSec People. So I'm a security recruiter. So don't hold that against me. I've been in this industry, security specifically, for about 4 and a bit years now. Like to think I'm pretty involved in the community, and I've run workshops, done presentations around the country at some of the best technical conferences around, and like to do lots of other stuff with the community as well. Like I co-organize an event in Melbourne called AllSec, and host a shameless plug. I host a podcast called Hacking into Security, and that covers the journeys of some amazing people, like the world's first ever CISO, to security researchers, to red teamers, to all sorts. There's lots of practical advice in those conversations as well. Yeah, and that's me. So we're going to try and cover as much as we can in a short space of time. So if we end up running over, we're going to have to cut it short, but we'll try our best. But this industry is really complex. I speak to a lot of people that want to get into security, and the thing is, there's so many different areas. So we're going to try and break things down from the industry to then how you can be proactive in trying to actually land a job. So whether you're a student, whether you're trying to get into security from another part of IT or non-IT or whatever it is, help you be proactive in I guess, how you do that, and all those sort of steps along the way. Hopefully, we can give you some advice around that as well.
Cool. So what the industry kind of looks like is split up into a few roles. So you have mainly from the offensive security, so the penetration testing space, which is where I'm probably most familiar with, and also kind of moving into the more defensive space, which is what I'm really getting familiar with more recently. But basically you have internal roles, you have consultancy, you have freelance, and then there's this new thing, well, not so new now, around bug bounties. So internal roles are typically for companies that are large enough to afford an internal security job. So usually it could be anywhere from 50 plus people. It really depends on what the company is trying to do and what their main objectives are. So this could be internal pen testing, security operations, etc. And they're mainly financially driven companies. So they may produce or run some kind of widget as a result of that company. And they're typically not in a business around security. So that's one thing that you kind of have to consider, where if you want to really push yourself to be a security practitioner in an internal role, they're not in the business of being in security. If it's a bank, they're in the business of money, and that's selling money, making money, or whatever. So the funding is usually driven by compliance, regulation, and in some rare cases, actually, we're seeing this less so now, which is quite nice, that they actually care about security and really want to do a lot in that space. But usually it's driven out of compliance or regulation. So you're kind of more likely than not seen as a cost center, as opposed to a consultancy, for example, one that sells security services. You're seen more as the product. So you take Big Four or any kind of startups. There's lots of security consultancies around Australia now. They're in a business of selling a product, and that product is you and your knowledge. So they're more likely to seek for you to be very billable or utilized, and a lot of their revenue is solely based on that. Then you have freelancers, which is a very, very interesting role. You can kind of potentially not know where your next meal comes from. It's essentially a contractor, but you can go through to an internal role. I know certain consultancies that use freelancers quite often, and they will use them as burst capability. So in the event they have a lot of customers that come to them for services, they can leverage freelancers for that, to achieve what they need to achieve. And then finally, you have bug bounties. So it's similar to a contractor. They have very niche skills, and they typically can perform certain types of assessments. So you might have bug bounty hunters, which specialize on cross-site scripting or cross-site request forgery or asset discovery. And there's many companies out there. Bugcrowd and HackerOne seem to be the most prevalent at the moment. But the one thing I will stress, there's only a handful of people around the globe that really actually make a living out of bug bounty hunting. It's not necessarily trying to discourage anyone to go towards that kind of role, but you just need to know that you might be living from week to week or paycheck to paycheck or bug to bug as well. Cool. So there's no real kind of secret source sort of thing that you have to, you perform A, B, C in that order, and then all of a sudden you land a job. But there's definitely things and traits of an individual that is moving like into security from another field, or moving within security to another aspect of security, because it's very, very broad. And the first thing that I personally always look for is actual passion. For me personally, when I was getting into cybersecurity and IT in general, I never really wanted to get into it as a job. I wanted to keep it as a passion for myself. So I was looking into other aspects. So actually, I wanted to join the military for a long time when I was quite young and in high school, and wanted to keep computers and security and hacking stuff as a bit of a passion project. I obviously didn't go down that path, because here I am. So some of the things I would look for is that same passion, that you go out of your way to attend things like conferences, which is something that we'll kind of mention a little bit. And do you learn by yourself? Do you pay for your own things? And also, what relevant skills do you have, and what do you bring to the table when you are talking to a prospective company that needs a security person? So for instance, if you're a developer looking to get into security, or you're an existing security practitioner wanting to change a little bit, what skills and do you bring to the table? And that's something we cover in a little bit as well. So generally what I look for is kind of touching on the humble aspect of this. Is there's an acronym called SWAN, as in the bird. So are you smart? Do you work hard? Are you ambitious? And are you nice? And I can't emphasize enough the nice aspect of that. So no one wants to work with jerks. And I've been fortunate enough to know a lot of people, some very, very highly skilled people in my life, some of whom work for Project Zero and all these other really cool companies around the world. And they're some of the most humble and nice people I've ever met in my life. So I can comfortably go to them, ask them what I would think is a very stupid question to them, but they'll turn around and say, yeah, well, this is how it works, and this is what you should look for, without smacking me down. So there's the aspect of SWAN, but I also put a T at the end, so SWANT, because they need to be technical as well, because it's a technical role. And finally, are you enthusiastic about what you do? The thing I've found in the past when hiring people, or even chatting to people when we were going to physical conferences and chatting to one another, was a big driver for a lot of individuals was the money. Yes, cybersecurity pays well. However, if you're in it for the money, it's a short shelf life, and it's quickly going to get found out. And you're probably not super passionate about it. You're not going to go out of your way to go into do a lot of things, and ultimately your marketable skills and what you bring to the table are going to kind of lack between you and your peers who potentially started at the same time. Ricky?
Yeah, so in terms of really trying to make a move in the industry, it's really about what you can offer to an organization, which might sound horrible, but that's the reality. It's a very, very competitive space to get into. The sooner you're aware of that, the better. I spoke to someone today who called me up, and they're looking at doing a master's. I can't remember if it was a master's must have been software engineering, because master's in security engineering would be too narrow, I think. And then he asked about the job prospects after. And the reality is, regardless of level of education, degree, master's, PhD, I don't see any particular role asking for that. It's a lot of it is around what you know and what skills you can bring, and that from basically having some skills to offer in the first place. So I talk about reverse engineering your move into the industry. So I think it's important to understand the industry itself. So breaking it down into different areas. So you can look at different professionals out there, and they all have different roles. So whether it's GRC, whether it's application security, whether it's DevSecOps or cloud security, or whether it's a pen tester, and the list goes on. And every role has a slightly different skill set. So if you know what area you want to work in, then basically learn those sort of skills. Then when it comes to applying for jobs or putting yourself forward, you actually have something relevant. And then we can touch on sort of certifications, and that question comes up a lot. Basically, what certification can I get that's going to help me? And the reality is there aren't many. So if you want to be a pen tester, particularly OSCP might get you an interview, but there's no one certification that's going to land you a job. A lot of it comes down to what you do in your spare time. And again, that can be demonstrated through learning. So it doesn't have to be formal education. It can be stuff that we'll cover again later in the slides, but really it's more about what you do in your spare time, because that sort of demonstrates where your interest lies. Because even if you're working right now, or if you're doing a degree or a master's or whatever, you don't determine what the curriculum is, or you don't determine what the work day to day looks like. But in your spare time, that's where you spend your time or your money on doing stuff that's interesting for you. Next slide, please.
Righty. So we touched on one of these points, and this is something we both wanted to kind of extract back on the passion, because it's so important that you are highly passionate about what you do. So for me, for example, I'm at home. This is my house. This is my study, and I have a server rack right there with a server and a NAS and a few other Cisco bits. And I've got Cisco switches all around the house, VLAN everywhere, and I've got CCTV networks and all that kind of stuff, right? Because this is what I love doing. I love playing around with this stuff. I'll set up a Kubernetes cluster and just like tear it down. I'll set up some Docker stuff. I'll tear it down. So those are the kinds of things that people are looking for. And that's one of the first things that I always asked whenever I was interviewing anyone for a pen testing role. One of the first questions I said was, what's your home lab setup like? And sometimes, you're not in a fortunate position where you can afford servers and racks and NASs and switches and all that kind of thing. I had one person turn around saying, I can't afford that, but I found a really old laptop from my old workplace that they were giving away. So it's only got 4 gigabytes of RAM. So I kind of have to be really, really vigilant about what's running on there. But I play around with things, which is, really, really good. Do you have, if you're in a development space, do you have a GitHub account? So that is your portfolio, right? That is a showcase of what things you develop, what languages you develop those things in, and how do you contribute back to a broader community, right? So, and that's one of the key things I would like to kind of point out, which is not there, is how do you contribute back to a community more broadly? Do you attend OWASP meetups? Do you attend conferences? Do you do the CTFs? Do you participate in capture the flags, or do you have a security blog post that you're doing on the side? Do you have anything like CVEs? So if you do a little bit of research on the side, then that's something you can kind of showcase and saying, well, I got 4 CVEs in this product because I was just playing around with it in my spare time, or at work as well, which is quite good if you can do that. And then also, helping friends, family out in the security to gain practical experience. We're all in security. Some of you aren't, but want to get into it. That's fantastic. But we all need to be champions of it as well. So do you drive and send a message out to your friends? Do you help your grandma set up, 2-factor authentication or something like that for internet banking? Those are the kinds of things that, you can kind of say, hey, I'm not in security right now, but I'm the go-to person for everyone that I know about security. And last but definitely not least, although this year's been a bit of a mess with conferences,
a shit show is appropriate.
I'm trying to be a little bit more diplomatic, but it's been absolutely terrible for conferences. Sort of. I mean, yeah, we're talking about it just before the presentation that a lot of the things that we drive and we kind of get from a conference is that physical aspect. I'd love to be in Sydney right now and present to a bunch of people, meet everyone face to face. Fortunately, I can't do that. But what it does open up is the ability for us to attend other conferences because everyone's gone virtual. So I was at Blue Code in Japan, which is coming up very, very soon. I think it's next weekend or something, the weekend after, or Code Blue rather. And there's all sorts of other US-based conferences which are launching as well. Unfortunately, you probably have to get up at about 3 or 4 in the morning to attend them. So that goes back on that passion thing, right? So those are the kinds of things that I would commonly look for if I was to hire someone. And Ricky, maybe you want to take a little bit of that as well to talk about what you look for.
Yeah. So the thing is, I know people that do these things, but then they don't document it. When I say document it, that could be on your CV. It could be on your LinkedIn profile. Because a lot of really landing a job is about being found, or someone's going to search, your profile as such. So like personally, I have certain, say, keywords that I go looking for if I'm looking for certain types of roles. And if someone, has those words, then clearly they're going to be interesting for me. And then it's about then understanding that person, see if they're a good fit culturally or, from a sort of human contact point of view. But it's really important to do these things and then basically put it somewhere so people can actually see it. And it's not bragging about it, but it's just effectively, it is self-marketing, it's branding. And whether we like it or not, you, especially early in your career, you need as much help as possible. And if you can sort of, again, showcase this stuff, and I'm very confident to say this, that if back when Luke was in his previous role at Context as the pen testing manager, if he saw like a sort of more junior person who had, again, we could go, real sort of strip things back. Let's say no formal education, they finished high school as such, but since then or through their own sort of teen years, they've been doing coding, they got into a bit of hacking, they've started a blog post, they've done a little bit of bug bounties. Doesn't have to be successful, but just doing it is, again, the process. It's sort of close to pen testing as you get without being paid for it. And maybe they found a CVE. Those things combined, and if they went to one of the local meetups like an OWASP or a Sec Talks, All those things would build a really good image of someone. And I guess, Luke, that someone like that would be amazingly interesting for you to at least have a conversation with.
Absolutely. And I always went out of my way to kind of ensure that I did at least have a conversation with those individuals, if not to give them the job, just to inspire them to keep on going at it and maybe give them some kind of guidance around how they should go about it. And that's not just me. I mean, there are other people in my position that do that as well. And, you know, I can think of at least a dozen people that were in a very, very similar situation to that. Unfortunately, you know, my previous role at the time, we were looking for someone a little bit more senior that could hit the ground running. But if we were in a cycle of identifying and retaining, actually, and getting on board someone that was in a junior position, then hands down, you know, one of those dozen or so people would have been selected. So, there's many ways to get into the industry, and I'm glad to be presenting at OWASP chapter. So that kind of tends to attract more people that are in a developing space, or development space rather, and they kind of want to move potentially into security, or are in security in a sec-eng kind of role and want to perhaps, you know, explore other options. So for me personally, I was in the sysadmin, network engineering, and then ultimately security engineering, what's now is called, you know, security engineering, and then I moved into the penetration testing space. And there are many other people. You know, we have a few people internally at Seek where they were developers for a long time, and then they moved into architecting, you know, what AWS looks like, and then moved into security. Or they were developers for a long time, and they had a lateral movement straight into the security team. And you know, there's many things that they really bring to the table, because they know what code looks like, they know what the developers are using. And this, as an attacker and as a pen tester, the thing that you want to get into is into the mindset of the person who created the thing you're trying to hack. That could be a piece of code, could be a widget, could be a network, could be the entire infrastructure. But you want to get into their mindset. And what the developer kind of brings is that developer mindset to help secure it against those bad guys trying to get in. Pass over to you, Ricky.
So we'll talk about building your profile, and it's really important. So again, particularly early in your career, maybe then sort of later down the line when you're already established, is you need to be found. So you need a good LinkedIn profile, personal blog. There's no harm in having that at all. So if you do some research or whatever it might be, having something just to document what you're up to is a really helpful thing. Documenting code, you know, what you contribute to in terms of GitHub. You know, we've got sort of, again, Luke and I, a lot of mutual friends, and one in particular who I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him, but Codingo. You know, his profile is just ridiculous on GitHub. If you look at the contributions that he made, sort of pre-pen tester and when he got into the space, you can see why the guy absolutely killed it doing web apps. And then he's now working at BugCrowd, and he was top 20 in the world on the BugCrowd leaderboard. You know, so this background that Luke was talking about before, you know, developer to pen tester or developer to security engineer with an AppSec perspective, it's massive. And again, if you can then show other people that you've got this foundation knowledge of something, so whether it's infrastructure, whether it's coding or whatever it might be, and then you put a security lens on that, is massive. So again, having this stuff on your CV really important, because then it's keywords. And the same thing LinkedIn. Recruiters, HR people, hiring managers will look for people. And if you come up higher in the searches because you've got all these keywords, then it can only be good for your profile. And then talking about profile, I call it Operation Cleanup. So this is, I took a screenshot of this. This is going back bloody 4 years ago now. So this guy, wow, time has really flown. This guy put this on Facebook back when Trump was elected president. Obviously, I'm sure he was joking. You know, again, words of consequences, because the next slide will show what happened after this. or at least it should have said most of it. So we'll work on the wording there. But basically, this guy was a CEO. Like he was a CEO of a fair-sized tech company in the US, and was made to resign because of his, in his words, incredibly dumb comment. And it just shows, something you put on social media that could be a joke could really get taken the wrong way. So, people, whether they're younger, whether they're, intoxicated or whatever, they might do things or put things on social media for a laugh, but these things can impact your career. So it's a really, I think, valuable thing sometimes to have a bit of a review on, your profile. Is there anything on there that could actually, as a hiring manager, if they viewed your profile, would that give them a negative or the wrong impression? So first impressions do count. And again, if someone sees something really stupid or some disgusting comment that you've made, then that's not going to be a good situation for you.
Absolutely. And, back in my previous role when I was looking at hiring pen testers, that's one of the first things I looked for. As soon as I saw someone's CV and I saw that they kind of hit those key criteria around passionate, experience and everything that I needed, the next thing I did was jump on LinkedIn, jump on Twitter, jump on Facebook, do some Googling, do some OSINT on them as well, just to kind of get an idea about who they are. And there was another person, we've mentioned this previously around kicking a turtle, right? And so there was the story goes like there was like a video of a person kicking a turtle, which went a little bit outside.
Yeah, someone kicked a turtle on video on Instagram, which is just bloody stupid to do. But if you're a hiring manager and you see something stupid like that, I'd be very surprised if you'd hire that or consider that person. And again, that person has put something on their personal social media profile, thinking of no consequences to their career. But again, stuff you do in your personal time or you put out there online, it can impact. So some people don't like the idea of that someone's basically checking them out on LinkedIn or reviewing their social media presence. But the reality is, as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, you want to know who you're dealing with and they're going to fit into your culture. And end of the day, if it's online, then it's generally available for everyone to access anyway.
Yeah, and I like turtles, and there's no way in hell I would hire anyone that kicked one. So this one's yours, mate.
Yeah, so building a network is essential. A little bit harder to do in this new virtual world that we're currently in, but it's still possible. So I think sometimes people particularly think about maybe the hiring manager, but I think you want to build relationships with potentially as many peers as possible. One, for information sharing, information knowledge, and getting things from other people and contributing as well. And also, you just never know where these things are going to go. So one of the best ways to get a job, particularly early in your career, is getting referred to a position. We'll go back to Luke because it's real case situations. But as a hiring manager, if one of his team said, "Oh, I know this person. She comes to this meetup. She's not working in security, but she comes to the meetup. She's clearly interested in security. But she's been doing CTFs and blah blah blah, and seems like a really cool person." That's a massive in. That person compared to applying online with 50, 100, 200 other people, you have a lot better chance. So just having a network itself from that perspective is nice, but also, again, to share knowledge with people, to ask things, because this community is incredible. For those that are in it and that come to events regular and they go to conferences, they already know because they're already in the sort of the industry as such, and they're building relationships, and it is such an amazing place. Like I've worked in other industries in the past, and it's such a unique place in my opinion. So many people they're willing to help, share knowledge. They've been in your position and they appreciate it, and people will help you. So you can find people online really easily, like particularly let's say LinkedIn. So let's say I want to work in application security because I'm a developer or I've got some coding skills. And that would be the most logical move for me, because that's where security and development comes together. It would make a lot of sense to go onto LinkedIn and then start searching application security as a sort of keyword, and then just start playing around with the filters and things like that. So if you're living in Sydney and you search application security, and then you find hundreds of people, then you'll have lots of sort of, I don't know, second or third connections potentially. But then you can just start messaging people, and just a nice sort of easy message of, hey, such and such, my name's Ricky, passionate about security, or I'm starting to get into security. I've got a development background. I see that you were a developer as well. It'd be great to connect. And you send that to many, many people, and you always make the messages personalized. You'd be amazed of how many friendly people are there to offer advice, offer to catch up for coffees, or, you know, go to a meetup with you or something like that. And before you know it, doing that for a number of months, 3 months, 6 months and longer, suddenly you have all this network of people, and you know the industry a hell of a lot better than you used to. But you do have to put yourself out there. So finding common interests, particularly ones that you have a genuine interest in, is a really good way to start.
Yeah, and the thing I'd like to add to that too is that, I mean, there are certain people in the industry that are not so comfortable in just openly connecting on the physical level and sort of at a conference, because it can be quite overwhelming, like approaching a group of 10, 20, 30 people all congregated together. It's really, really difficult to break into those circles. So what you can actually do in a conference setting, when we are, you know, COVID normal, is actually go up to an individual saying, oh, hi, how you doing? My name's Luke. I want to get into security. Are you in security? Or when you're lining up, you know, to get a beer or to get a soft drink or lining up for the next talk, strike up a conversation with the person in front of you, behind you, next to you, or whatever. You never know, like that person might be a hiring manager that they're just so happen to be looking for someone to come on board at your level, or you might be a senior person and they're looking for a senior person as well. But the thing I would stress to you, don't make it seem like you're overly desperate to only connect with people for the sole intention and sole purpose to only get a job, because it's very transparent. Like you will stand out. Me personally, I always like to go to conferences when we could go to conferences, purely just to have a chat to people. I'll sit in a couple of presentations, some of whom might be my friends that are presenting, so I want to go and support them. But then afterwards, you know, when it's like, you know, communal networking time, I'll go off and I always try to at least talk to a handful of new people that I haven't talked to before. Or if there's a group of people where one of the people I know, I'll just walk up to that group and say, oh, hi, how's it going? Which can be quite intimidating if you're not that way inclined. So maybe take a network of friends with you, and something like the AWSN is a fantastic network that you can support, that you can use for that support mechanism as well, or any kind of other groups for that. This one's yours too, mate.
Yeah, and you've basically covered some of that there. So you're ahead of the game there.
That's it.
So yeah, like back in the real life or real world of you know, working, like, to be honest, it's bloody awkward trying to meet new people. And this is coming from someone who is meant to be putting themselves out there and do these things. Honestly, I don't like it myself. I do not want to walk up to a group of, you know, like Luke said, 10 people and just go, oh, hey, I'm Ricky. I mean, that's bloody awkward. Like you wouldn't, I mean, how would you feel being one of those people? Someone just rocked up to your group and starts gate crashing the conversation. It's a lot easier to do it in smaller numbers. So like Luke said, you know, if someone's in the queue, you know, getting food or whatever, and just ask some open questions, really non-personal stuff to start with. You know, where do you work? What are your interests? Or, you know, is this the first time you've been here? Open questions are a great way to ask, you know, questions in a conversation, because it opens the conversation. So who, what, when, why, how. Also, I'd recommend setting small targets, because at a conference, again, you could hear and see some amazing content. The thing is, there's great and amazing content online. On YouTube, you can watch DEF CON videos or all sorts of conferences, or attend online conferences these days. What you can't replicate is the people. And that's where you need to make the most of actually the human aspect. But if you set a small target of, you know, the morning of the conference that you just want to talk to 2 people or 3 people, you can feel really satisfied if you've done that. And then do the same thing in the afternoon. If you've come away from a whole day and you've spoke to 5 new people that you didn't know before, that's a really good thing. And use that as stepping stones, because if you do that at every sort of meetup or conference, suddenly your network gets a lot bigger. And again, it's those personal connections that can make a really big difference in your career. You know, and like Luke says, you never know who you're going to speak to. You know, your current boss, he's a very chilled out and relaxed person. He does not look like a traditional CISO. You know, he'd be at a conference like this, or like most of us, just in like casual clothes, and you could talk to your next boss. You could talk to all sorts. Like I remember this one guy at a conference. I actually placed him in a job, fortunately, and I never would have placed him in the job if he hadn't come to talk to me. And we spoke about his CV, and when I met him, I knew that he would be right for one of my clients, not because of the CV, but just because of his attitude and the way he spoke, and I knew he'd be a good fit. And like because of that conference, he got a job. And then also at another conference, he actually met his partner, or partner at the time at least. But it's just weird. Like you just don't know how things can materialize, but unfortunately you have to put yourself out there. But start in small numbers is my advice, and try not to be too daunted by it if possible.
Yeah, no, I did meet my current boss at a conference last year. So I had no idea who he was, where he worked, or anything like that. But I just sat down next to him and said, "Hey, how's it going?" and just had a conversation, sort of thing. And then, you know, every so often I saw him at another conference and another conference, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those things. The thing I would stress is don't go out of your way to go to a conference to meet someone that you might marry or anything like that, because it's not that kind of place. But you never know what might happen. But on the topic of meetups and conferences, there are fantastic conferences around, and now that we're all in kind of virtual setting mode, or virtual mode rather, you have the ability to access a lot more content. Yeah, you can see the DEF CON videos after the fact and all those kind of things as well, but you know, not everyone publishes their content online, such as like Black Hat. You know, you have to purchase them, or hack in the boxes. You know, one out of Amsterdam. You have to kind of purchase the stuff, and they might release it 2 years down the track. So there's a really good website, the fourth one listed on there, which is listed there twice. So the first one and fourth one, it's just that important. Created by Kadingo and Hackluke a little while back now, but that has a list of all the conferences. It's a little bit dated at the moment because no one's really updating their conferences, especially not around the APAC region, because no one's really running them in the physical sense. But keep an eye on that one. And also there's meetups, there's OWASP, there's Sec Talks, there's conferences, there's a really good one if you're up in Brisbane around IoT, if you're into hardware hacking things as well. Some really good ones called SCADA Hackers. Yeah, I'll move on to CVs.
So yeah, look, massive. Very aware of the time, and as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of content, and we can go on for a long time about this stuff. So we'll sort of try just narrow things down a little bit. But you have to get someone's attention very quickly reading a CV. Like, to be really transparent, most managers, HR people, recruiters, they do not read every word on a CV. They want to see what they need to see as quickly as possible. And if you can't articulate things, then you're in trouble. Communication is really important. So how you present yourself is massive. If you've got a 12-page CV, that's not a good start. I know a CISO who's pretty ruthless about this, and he himself says that he's got a 2-page CV. And if he can have a 2-page CV with 20 plus years experience, then other people should be able to as well. So there's lots of good templates out there. I use canva.com. It's pretty good. It's got hundreds or thousands of templates that you can use. You can make them look a lot more modern, which looks pretty cool. Or again, if you want a sort of more standard Word type version, But again, you want to grab someone's attention as quickly as possible, but within 60 seconds, I'd say. So that sort of profile thing at the top, explaining who you are and what your interests are, the better you can articulate that, the better chance you'll have. And also put, again, information. So all that stuff we spoke about earlier, put it in there somewhere, because it's going to help get you found and get you assessed as well. And again, meetups, conferences, a lot of people don't put this stuff in. So I know people that do some amazing things, and it's never on their CV, and they're not doing themselves justice. So again, even a virtual conference, you're investing your own time. That's massive compared to someone else who isn't. So if there's a hiring manager who had the choice of two people, and one is the standard stuff, and let's say the other one is standard stuff, but then this person's attended some meetups, they've done some other stuff, they're going to go with that person because they're showing that they're willing to invest their time, and it's that passion that is then demonstrated by that. Go for the next one.
Yeah, just a bit on that. I mean, my CV is one page, mostly because I'm not very good at what I do, and I don't really have a lot of experience. But no, my CV is one page because I've seen a lot of CVs. I think last calendar year, I think I went through something about 600 CVs or so, and there were some which were legitimately 12, 13, 14 pages, and by the time you reach page 3, you want to do your due diligence, and you want to make sure you invest the amount of time for that human being. But geez, it's a slog trying to go through a 12-page CV, and it's not really required to know every single little project you worked at if you're working at a bank and saying, oh, I was there for 10 years and I did 45 projects, and here's the default, like the detailed description of every single one of those. So short and sweet. And then if you want to use something that dives into a little bit more information, blog post or my personal CV links off to my LinkedIn page, where I have a lot more information around, the connections, the things that I'm involved with as well. Do you want to talk through the CISO survey?
Yeah, so we a while ago now did a survey amongst a number of CISOs, I think Australian and globally, and got lots of good info. But the thing that I guess want to share in particular is this thing here. So this is where they said the skill requirements were. These were the sort of harder to fill positions. So not suggesting someone just goes after the hardest to fill roles because that's going to ultimately get them a job, because you actually need to be interested in the stuff in the first place. But if you're picking an area of security, it makes a lot of sense to work in an area where you're going to be in demand, rather than an area that's maybe a lot easier to hire for. More niche something is, in particular, sort of the newer, less mature areas of security that are coming through, like in this country. So threat hunting is very much part of that. Incident response is more established than threat hunting, but it's still, I'd say, sort of newer than some other areas. So there's lots of, again, different areas, different skill sets required, and pretty much, most of those there's a different skill set required in each one. But if you're looking to gravitate towards something, and your interest is towards the top, then that could be a good place to start. And then, again, I think I speak about being proactive in your search. So, no offense, Luke, but applying for jobs on Seek, if that's your sole way of doing it, and applying for jobs on Indeed and Jura, which is Seek owned as well, and LinkedIn and all the other methods, that's not proactive. That's just being a number, in my opinion. You can be proactive, and that includes basically finding your own job. So basically goes back to reverse engineering your move into the industry. So what you want to find out is if you know what job you want to work in, let's pretend it is a penetration tester. Bad example, because most pen testers don't have the job title penetration tester, which is not helpful. Most are security consultants or other things. And this is an issue with the security industry. Job titles are bloody vague, and different you can have one title that means 10 different things, particularly security engineers, but that's a whole nother topic. But let's just say we go with application security because we're at OWASP, and there are AppSec engineers. You could search that skill. You could search in your location. Let's go application security, Sydney. Then you can start seeing all those profiles of the people that work in application security. Then you look at the companies that they work for. Then you can search those companies for the CISOs, the team leads, the head of security engineering, or whatever it might be. And then you narrow that down. Suddenly you're left with maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 potential companies where you could work if you want to work in that role. Then just basically be proactive and send some messages. And it's not a desperate thing, but you want to send connection messages, have a very sort of friendly, generic thing, or even be specific. You could look at that particular manager at that company and check out, have they done a presentation at a conference before? I'm pretty sure Luke would be flattered if someone contacted him and said, "Oh, hey, I see that you're one of the co-organizers of Australia's most disorganized conference," or I saw that you did a presentation at OzCert recently. Found it really interesting. Would be great to connect. Something really personal like that will get you a connection request. Too many people send connection requests the standard way of just pressing the button. Even LinkedIn says when you're about to send a connection request, do you want to add a note? There's a reason for that. Is the stats back up that you're more likely to get a connection or successful connection if you write a personalized note to that person. And then you can start building again relationships that way, because then you can start messaging a manager, not even ask for a job, but just say, "Hey, these are my skill sets. I see that you hire people in this space. I've been playing around with these things here. If you ever have these sort of requirements, would love to have a conversation." Something quite blasé, but specific, can be very helpful. That's how you can sort of make direct connections with managers, and a lot of people, or a number of people, will respond back. Some won't. It's some people might find that too direct. You can't please everybody. But if I was very keen to do something and I knew this company did that sort of work and I wanted to work for that company, I would let them know. That's my view on that.
So once you have made contact, right, so we kind of go back to mapping the industry, mapping your value and what you bring to an organization. You need to show them you have the passion for it. So, we talked about how it's structured and all those things. So you have to do some kind of research, right? So if you see the company's a bank, you need to kind of identify what value is to them, or if it's an insurance company, right, what value is for them. You could have majored in commerce or finance, or you have a trading portfolio and you're kind of really into this kind of stuff. That shows them saying, "Oh, not only is this person coming in with security knowledge or application or in specific industry knowledge, they're also coming in with these things that the core business does." Because at the end of the day, if you're in an internal role, what you're doing is finding out security issues, solving security problems, or responding to security incidents, and then representing those things back to someone that makes a decision about it. And that's a business leader, or that's a CEO or CFO or whatever. So you have to translate it into what meaning what meaning it has for them, right? They don't care that you spent all weekend developing a 0-day and you bypassed ASLR or something like that to, exploit something. But they don't know what that means. All they want to know is someone on the internet can access this thing and defraud customers, which is a negative result for us. They understand that because that's direct impact to their core business. So those are the things that you can bring forward, to show the value that you have to that organization. Show things that what skills and abilities you have outside, and don't go in depth saying, "Oh, well, I play tennis on Saturday morning, I go swimming after that," and all these kind of things. But show that you have a life outside as well, and everything brings diversity through to what you're trying to achieve and what the company's trying to achieve as well, right? So if you were a young whiz bang tennis player, bring that into it as well, saying, well, I know how to thrive under pressure. I've been at the finals for state championship or something like that, so you know how to approach those things. And also mention, for me personally, I'm always looking for a place where I can grow, a place where I can help, and a place where I can work with really good people. So if that's what you want as well, mention that as well. Anything else to add on that one, Ricky?
No, I thought there's some valid points there.
Cool. This one's yours.
Yeah, so I did a survey. I can't remember the numbers, but it's well over 100 people responded, security professionals, and asking them how they got their last job. And it was really interesting stats. So a lot of them was basically through, again, people that know, so through a network, meeting at a conference, and again, some percentage is applying online, and then headhunters, recruiters like myself. But this is why having a network and knowing people is so important. So whether it's by chance bumping into someone at a conference, having a conversation, whether it's again just getting recommended, there's a lot of jobs happen in this industry offline. We don't advertise jobs ourselves, and I know a number of companies, and we've got jobs at the moment that you won't see online anywhere. And, it's sort of thing where only pops up when the person's got a new job on LinkedIn. So, what you see online in terms of job adverts isn't the be all and end all of the jobs out there. There's a lot more that happens. And I think the more that you're, again, interconnected with the community, it's only going to help your career as well.
Absolutely. So for instance, I did the majority, I'll probably say 95% of the jobs that I've had in my lifetime has always been, I either knew someone there or they just gave me the job. I was kind of lucky. And only one really I've had to actually a couple I've only had to apply online sort of thing through not really knowing anyone there or anything like that. And I think one of them was at Domino's and I was delivering pizzas. So a large, like exactly what Ricky said, a large component of the people you meet might be the people that employ you, or might be the people that you work with, or might be the people that work for you. So if you are in a position where you're a hiring manager, I would strongly recommend you go along to these meetups and the conferences as well, because A, it shows that the company for which you work cares about security, and B, you might actually identify some really, really good talent. And you'll meet them in a non-confronting way, which is not during an interview, like a formal interview where you're dressed up in a suit and all those kind of things, right?
Which is a lot more intimidating.
Yeah. So speaking of interviews.
Yeah, very nice segue there. So let's say you've applied online, or you've got referred to someone, or you've been proactive. Now comes the interview. Do yourself a favor and don't be an idiot and don't research. You need to prepare yourself. There are, oh God, I spoke to someone, a client recently, and I'm very glad to say it wasn't our candidate, but he interviewed someone who, at the end of the interview, they asked him, and this is someone who owns a security company. They didn't realize if they were a recruitment company or a security company. And that shows how little research that person did. They were just obviously happy to interview, which is great. But the thing is, you could do the best interview, but that mistake there is enough to get you not basically go no further. You need to research the company, and that goes beyond just a simple 5-minute look on the company's website. You need to do some real research. Having a look at sort of any recent news, or asking people around, or just some decent Googling, OSINT, fancy Googling. You want to come to that interview prepared, knowing stuff about the company that maybe isn't just on the website. Because if you're a hiring manager and that person talks to you about the business, it shows they've actually put the effort in. It demonstrates their interest level, and that's what you want. You want engaged and interesting people. We'll talk about dress code. That's really weird these days. So a lot of interviews happen, like this now, over video. What's the appropriate dress code? My advice always is you want to be the smartest dressed person in the room when it comes to an interview. It's a lot easier to recover from a situation where you're in a suit and the person you're interviewing is in a t-shirt. And, that's fine. And you can sort of make a joke of that, be lighthearted that you'd rather be wearing that, but it's an interview. So, you're dressing to impress. It's a lot more difficult the other way around where the person you're interviewing is in a suit and you've called it wrong and you're in a t-shirt. Because again, it's not a good look. So being presentable, particularly if you're looking at consultancy type companies, very client facing type things, or sort of more very professional environments. There's a big difference between like a tech company and professional, let's say, financial services. So if I'm honest, I don't know what people are wearing these days. I'm guessing most people are casual at home, but if you're working at a big four consultancy, you still might be, a bit more presentable, especially if you've got lots of meetings with customers, or at least presentable from the waist up anyway. And then be aware there's different types of interviews. So it could be a technical round. It could be a very cultural type round. It could be a mixture of all sorts. You want to get your head right and try and understand which type of interview it's going to be. So whether your interview, whether you've done everything yourself and you don't have that sort of contact to tell you, you can just ask the HR person, ask the person, let's say, again, fast forward or go back 6 months ago and it's Luke, and say, right, Luke says, yeah, I'd like to catch up for an interview. Just ask what, just so I can help prepare and we get the most out of this, what type of interview will it be? If it's a recruiter that's managing the process, ask the recruiter. If they don't know, get them to know, because you want to be as prepared as possible. My advice is just be prepared for everything, but don't think it's going to be one thing if you're not entirely sure. And also, just in terms of preparation, research who you're interviewing with as well. Check out their LinkedIn. How long have they been there themselves, and have they done any interesting things that you might like to highlight? Maybe they've done some interesting presentations themselves. Maybe they're an expert in a certain area. And again, if you're demonstrating that you can talk about that topic in the interview, it shows you've done your research. And then one other thing is go to the interview with smart questions. So if all goes to plan, hopefully you're going to have a job offer. That means you've got something to think about. From my perspective, interviews are just information gathering exercises. So from your side as a sort of candidate, you're there interviewing that company. Is this the right place to work for me? Is the role interesting? Is the company interesting? Is there career development, et cetera, et cetera? The company is interviewing you as well. Can you do the job? Are you a good cultural fit, et cetera? But you want to make sure that you have enough information to make an informed decision. Smart questions around the business, the culture, not just the day-to-day stuff. Some people, do you ask about money? I don't know, if I'm honest. I wouldn't personally. But again, maybe you want some guidance from someone else, not in the interview itself, maybe before or after. Try and get some guidance. But be inquisitive, because hopefully you'll have a decision to make.
Yeah, and it's quite common for them to turn around to you and ask, what are your salary expectations? And when you do get asked that question, just be prepared for it as well. Don't turn around and say, oh, I haven't thought about that, because chances are you have exactly what you want, and be open and honest, saying, I'm on this much at the moment. I'd like to be on that much. And I've known some people that have gone for roles and they're like, I'm on this much at the moment. A little bit of a bump up would be nice, but I'd love to be on this much by the time, I'm 40 or 50 or 30 or whatever it might be. And that's, you're having an adult conversation with someone, right? And and during an interview, there's nothing wrong with asking and clarifying what kind of interview it is. And if you email the hiring manager and just say, hey, how you going? I just wanted to get in touch, just double check. Is this one a technical interview or a culture ad interview or something like that? And they turn around saying, how dare you get in contact with me, blah, blah, blah. The person's a jerk. You probably don't want to work there anyway. So just move right on.
That doesn't seem relevant these days. The interview, get there early, but not too early. At least, in the virtual world, at least, log online in time. But yeah, I remember you telling me a story, Luke, about someone turning up way too early for an interview. And these things do happen. I remember a client telling me a story once about someone turning up for an interview 40 minutes before the interview. And the thing is, you have, the more senior you get, the more your diary gets taken up with meetings, and you become extremely busy. And if someone turns up at that, half an hour, 40 minutes for an interview, that puts you in a really awkward position because you don't want to make that person wait. But then that means you're maybe not prepared or not ready for the interview as well, which then means the interview might not go as well as it could have gone. So I think the optimum sort of time is sort of 10 minutes before the interview. And yeah, and no sort of earlier than that, in my opinion. And you don't want to get there on time because that's not a good look either.
Yeah, and just to add to that, just a tad as well, is on that story, the person was there significantly early, and I was the first one to the office. I had to unlock it, had to do the alarm code and all this kind of stuff. And I'm frazzled because I have this, person sitting there in the lobby waiting to, go for an interview. I'm like, okay, let me get my thoughts together. I have some paper. Let me print out your CV and all those kind of things. And I felt rushed. Hence, because I rushed to the interview and potentially didn't provide that person with the opportunity that they would have normally have gotten had they been, maybe 20 minutes later or something like that. And there was one more thing, but I forget at this stage, so we'll just move right on.
Whilst you're there, sorry, and there's a point there about selling yourself against requirements. The sooner you can identify what they're looking for, the sooner you can basically, again, sell yourself against those requirements. So normally, in my opinion, most job descriptions are bullshit. It's like a long shopping list of things, when the reality is, from all the conversations I've had over the years with hiring managers, normally it's about 2 to 4 essential requirements within that. The rest are nice to haves that can be learned on the job. Or sometimes, and this has happened because someone's told me, HR have changed the job description, even after someone's approved it. So in that interview, the sooner you can find out, this is the role, but what are you actually looking for out of someone? Because you could be talking about, let's say you've been in the industry for 20 years, you've got all this experience. You could be talking about the wrong stuff. And by the end of it, you've run out of time to talk about the things that they want to hear about, or they need to hear about to understand if you're relevant for the role. So if you can get to that a bit sooner, then that can save a lot of time and hopefully have a more successful outcome as well.
Yeah, the point I just remembered was the no jerk policy, of not going to an interview and treating a human being sitting behind a reception desk like dirt, because that has happened in the past where a human, we would be, just because they're performing a certain function for the company doesn't necessarily mean that they're lesser or more important than someone else. So if you turn up to an interview process, when we do go back into physical form of seeing people, and you turn up to the interview 10 minutes early, and there's the person sitting at reception, be nice to them. Treat them just like you would anyone else in your life, and treat them like a human being, because they are a human being. And anyone else, there's a cleaner that goes into the interview room because you get let in early. Just be nice, because chances are, and there's a really good video clip that went around a little while ago of someone being treated quite terribly, and that person ended up in the interview room with that person that was being interviewed. So, what goes around comes around, right?
It's a small world.
That's it.
And don't be desperate. So don't be chasing up the company too soon. There's no harm in following up with asking for feedback, especially if you've got some other stuff going on. And if you do have other stuff going on, let them know that, because that can help speed up the process as well. So give them a heads up that you might be at offer stage with another company or whatever else you might have going on, just so they've got they can deal with the situation appropriately as well. Because, again, we'll let our customers know that if this person that is interviewing does have stuff happening, we'll tell them, because it means they're going to move a bit quicker as well. but yeah, don't be desperate. If you come off as that, it's never a good look. And yeah, just be very polite and courteous. So, a very relaxed, hey, how you doing? I just wanted to check. I interviewed, 4 or 5 days ago, and just wanted to see if there's any feedback yet. Very different tone to someone who could be more aggressive and demanding feedback, because that's never going to end well. And I think that is us.
That is it. Sorry for going over time. But thank you very much. If there's time for questions, I'll gladly take questions, or if not, then ping us.
Well, first I want to thank Ricky and Luke for such a magnificent presentation. It actually reminded me a lot of things I did when I was starting transferring from defense into security, things that I don't actually do anymore, that I'm more senior, and I think the nice things I should actually do. And yeah, so thank you very much. That was very nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I think Jack's looking at the questions, so I'll pass it to Jack and Cherry to read the questions.
Yeah, sure thing. So the first one is someone that had to duck out for a couple of minutes, and they're asking if the slides will be made available after, if there's anywhere they can get them from.
Yeah, they will be. We just refactored the slide deck for this one here, so there's not as much trademarked information. So
nice. Cool. And then the next one is the problem we face as freshers is that every company out there is looking for experienced candidates. Do you have any sort of like specific advice for how to get jobs as sort of just like brand new?
Can I be honest? Okay, you go on.
No, you go ahead. I was going to be nice a bit.
Go on, you be nice.
Okay, I'll be nice. Okay, good cop, bad cop. No, honestly, there are companies out there which are looking for people that want to get into cybersecurity and that are quite new to it. And if you're, depending on the level from which you're coming, so if you're coming from a graduate, straight out of university, straight out of high school, straight out of TAFE, then yeah, it would be a little bit more difficult to prove that value, to prove the expertise. And that's where things like highlighting what you've done in your personal time, things like your passion projects, your GitHub repos, any kind of pull requests that might be security related or not, all those things that say that you're contributing back, and it's not just a job for you. This is a way of life, sort of thing. But if you're a little bit more experienced and you're trying to laterally move, from a developer world or network engineering world into security, then that's the ultimate value you're bringing, because you can bring in that mindset of, I was a network engineer a little while back, and I knew how networks worked. I knew how attackers could potentially flow through a network, right? As a result, I just needed to prop up that security aspect of it. So I hope that answers that question in a nice way. But Ricky?
There are some companies that hire at the more junior level. The reality is most don't. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think pre-COVID, it was bloody hard for people trying to break into this industry. Post-COVID, or whatever stage we're at now and moving forward, it's going to be even harder. The reason is more organizations are now remote, whether it's by force or because they're choosing to. And because more companies are going remote, it means it's harder for them to train junior people. It's a lot easier to bring on someone who has experience from another company doing a similar role. They can come in, and yes, there'll be some learning from a cultural perspective and stuff like that. But it's a lot easier if someone's doing pen test at this company and to join as a pen tester at this company. So I think it's going to get a lot harder. But again, there's always still companies. You've just got to do the things that sort of Luke mentioned about there. And, if you can always just demonstrate your value is the really important thing. You need as much help as possible to stand out. And the more you can do those things, the more you're going to help yourself. So you have to be really proactive in your search, in how you promote yourself, in having a really, really good LinkedIn profile with lots of information about what you're doing to demonstrate that. The way I look at it is the closer you are to sort of doing the job, the closer you are to getting the job. So if you know what job you want to work in, go and learn those skills. If you don't know the skills that you need to learn, go and ask the people that do it. So again, let's pretend you want to be an AppSec engineer. Go onto LinkedIn, go message 10, 15, 20 application security engineers and just, very pleasant message and say, hey, this is me at the moment. I'd love to be doing, what you do. I want to be an AppSec engineer. What skills, would you recommend I learn? Because if you know the skills that people use on a day-to-day basis and you're asking, again, 10, 15 people and you see a lot of similarities there, you go and learn those skills, suddenly you've got a lot of what that company is looking for. And then you can talk to the hiring manager and say, hey, I've gone and spoke to these people. I've gone and learned these skills. What do you think? Or whatever the message is. But you have to be proactive. It's not just going to come to you. It's not just going to be apply online and you get lucky. You are literally one of a very large number when you apply for a role online. So you need to stand out.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's Big Four hiring graduate positions. I think Accenture is building a cybersecurity hub in South Australia. So if you are in South Australia, you can approach, go by that way. So, and that's your graduate entry. I mean, some of the big banks are hiring graduates as well. So that's a way to at least be considered for a role, and then build up that profile, build up that skill set, build up that value proposition, to show them why you stand out potentially to other people as well.
Yeah. Like, in all honesty, a degree in cybersecurity is not going to cut it. People don't learn enough specific knowledge that gets used in the job to make them stand out. And that's why the extra curriculum stuff, the additional things you're going to do, again, coming to an OWASP event, going to other things, is going to help you stand out. If you're fortunate enough to have been born in this country, or you have permanent residence, be flexible to move around. Like if you are an Australian citizen, I would thoroughly recommend be open to going to Canberra. There's lots of interesting government jobs in cybersecurity. There's a massive amount of investment going into cyber. And this is the thing, I spoke to someone today and they said about, I hear these, there's lots of money in security. I hear about lots of jobs coming. Yes, but not at entry level. This is the thing, it's, people that can do the job, that's where the requirements are. But again, there are definite options in Canberra where they're a bit, desperate's not the word, but they are more open-minded, and there's more incentives, I think, to hire at that sort of junior level. And I know people that have gone and worked and done roles in government and done some really, really interesting stuff, given them an amazing foundation, security clearances, and suddenly that sets them up for a really interesting career of all sorts of options. I know people that have gone working from government that are now working in Apple in San Francisco doing security. Like you can do some really interesting moves. So just, I think, always be open, and again, maybe look around the country where other jobs might be as well.
Yeah, nice. The next one is, how easy do you think it is to make a move into security with a sysadmin and DevOps background?
Yeah.
I don't think very, very hard. Just depends on the situation and who's hiring at the time, because you have directly transferable skills. Because if you're, just say, for instance, if you're working at Seek, if you come from a sysadmin DevOps background, move into the Seek security team, you know exactly what the sysadmins, the infrastructure team, the developers are all going through, because you've been there. So you can directly translate their pain points and potentially add some value to them from a security standpoint, and just put your security hat on and just say, yeah, I know this IDE is really, really terrible, but have you seen this cool plugin that really streamlines the security aspect of things, right? So you have somewhat of an inside track for those things. But again, it just really depends on what's available and when.
And you also don't need a security job title to do security work. So you can put your hand up and ask for more responsibility, or you can just get more security stuff in the role that you already do. So if you are working as a developer or sysadmin or a DevOps engineer, you can add security into your role, and then that's the best way to then transfer. So if possible, do that internally and then see if you can get an internal transfer if there is a security team. Because if you've got that, like Luke's saying about Seek, like if you've got that internal IP and you know how the business operates, that is huge value, because you already understand how the intricacies of the business work. And that can take some people 3 to 6 months to get up and running sometimes. So other things, like from a security aspect, might be easier to learn, like some of the tooling or processes rather than the actual business itself. Because if you know how the business operates, you know who the stakeholders are, you know the relationships, you may be able to already be able to turn some wheels or get things done. And yeah, so you don't always need the security job title to do security as well, is worth remembering.
Yeah, and put your hand up to be the security champion in that team as well. If there is a security program within the organization, put your hand up. I mean, we've just recently been fortunate enough to have a couple of people in a broader business at Seek move into the security team, and they've brought with them an incredible amount of experience, inside knowledge, connections to all relevant stakeholders within the business. So, as a sysadmin, to be quite frank, everyone because you've probably had to reset everyone's password at some stage. So you have an inside track, and a lot of big companies work on favors, right? So you've reset someone's password, you've helped someone in the past, and they might be more inclined to hear you out when you want to try to drive a internal security initiative as a result.
Yeah, nice. The next one is, are there any internship opportunities at Seek?
So this is where preparation is key, and I'm not really well prepared for that question, but let me find out, and I will endeavor to kind of feed it back through the OWASP crew. And yeah, I'm sorry, I should have come prepared for that.
Good question, though.
Great question.
And then the next one, I guess, is sort of like a little bit, maybe a bit open-ended, but sort of asking about like opinions on, say, having a master's in cybersecurity.
There's definite benefit with investing in yourself. No one's ever going to say you can't have this job because you have a master's degree. But I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible here, but I wouldn't hang your hat on it. If there's, for instance, taking an example of someone that went through university, straight out of high school, went through university, now looking for a cybersecurity job, versus someone that out of high school got straight into the industry. We're fortunate enough to get straight into the industry and just so happen to do some security stuff as a result. That person potentially is ahead of the person that did that degree. I'm not saying everyone should abandon university, because it definitely has its place. And unfortunately, we're still in a position where a lot of graduate positions require you to be an actual graduate. They don't really take into account the skills that you would bring and any kind of experience, because you've got to get through that HR firewall. But the one thing I would stress, things like certifications, diplomas, like at TAFE, degrees, masters, don't wholly and solely rely on those things to land you a job, but don't quit just because of what I'm saying now, because that definitely contributes to what you know more broadly. And ultimately, when you're going through university, you build up a network of people that you know as well. I mean, it's harder at the moment, but I've been friends with the people I went through university with a long time ago. I won't say numbers. And that person we're finally going to be actually working together at Seek very soon. So the networks you make go with you as well. So that's what I'm going to say about that, Ricky.
I think, yeah, just like, I'm not going to bag education. Education's great, and also, certifications can be really useful. You will hear us bag CEH, certified ethical hacker, but that's not because it's that bad of a cert, just because of the way it's pushed by certain, I don't know, people or organizations as such. Learning for the sake of learning is great. Learning because you want to achieve this job is not the right thing to do, in my opinion. So if you want to get this certification because you think it's going to get you a job, or you think you're going to do this degree because you think it's going to get you a job, or masters because you think it's going to get you a job, I don't think it will. I don't personally, as I've got, I guess, a bit of exposure in these situations. I don't know of any company that would say we would hire that person because of the masters. It's a lot of the other stuff, again, outside of education or work, that is the influencer in those situations. So don't solely rely on it. But if you want that as your foundation and you are hungry to learn because you want to learn, then there's never a bad, it's never a bad thing to do at all.
Thank you. The next question is, how are the opportunities like in the current scenario for someone who does not have a residency or citizenship and still wants to make a career here in Australia?
Good luck. It's horrible to say it. There's not a lot of sponsorship opportunities out there. Those companies that do sponsor will sponsor someone who's experienced. I feel like people that need sponsorship and they, I feel like people are missold sometimes, to be honest with you, and it really pisses me off. This, there's a lot of people that have come to Australia hoping, to achieve certain things in terms of education or certain jobs, or they do this education to then get them a job, but there's nothing at the end of it. And I know that, there's people that have got certain visas to come to Australia, and they've only been allowed to work in certain regions where basically there is no cyber jobs, which is just bloody ridiculous. You're setting people up to fail, and really you're just taking people's money. And it's really tough, if I'm honest, and that's where that community side of things is really important. The more into the community, the more relationships you have, the more people are willing to sort of push themselves and try and do favors for people. If you're applying for a role online with 100 other people and you need a visa sponsorship and there's other people that don't, unfortunately it's just going to leave you down the pecking order.
It does really depend on the size of organization for which you're applying as well. Certain smaller companies can find it very difficult in order to sponsor someone with a visa, and because there's a cost involved with it, and it can be quite expensive. So if you're a hiring manager, if you're a business owner, and you're looking to acquire some new talent, then potentially you will be looking at the monetary difference between someone, if it's an entry level, you might be looking at $60,000 a year, but you stand to maybe pay $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in fees as a result over the course of that person's tenure. So why would you pay essentially what could be $75,000 a year for a $60,000 person coming on board? I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I'm just saying that is a potential consideration as well. Just go into it eyes wide open. So potentially applying for larger companies, the ones that have a dedicated team, that have HR skill sets to deal with visas and just deal with it on a day-to-day basis, that might be the more appropriate approach.
Yeah, make yourself so bloody good that people want you, and if they want you, they have to sponsor you.
Okay,
that's everything.
Yeah, we're getting towards 7:30. If there are any more questions, we'll pass it on to you guys. I most sincerely want to thank you very much for your time, the honesty, and the good advice you provided to the community. I think everyone is very grateful. In the normal circumstances, let's give them a clap, but it's nobody. I'll give you a clap myself. There you go. So thank you. Great job, guys, and thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, and good luck, everyone.
And get in touch if you need anything.
Cool. That's it. Okay.
Bye.